Hey man, welcome to episode 50 of the Beatitudes podcast. I'm Dr. Greg Popcak, and we're continuing our series on headship habits. In the last episode, I was unpacking this idea of the Catholic vision of headship in family life is liturgical, not hierarchical or political. And what I mean by that is that instead of headship being, I'm going to tell my family what to do, or I'm in charge of my family. It's the idea that as a husband and father, I am the head of the home in the same way that the priest is the head of Mass. The priest doesn't get to just tell everybody what we're going to do today and make up the Mass as he goes. He's serving the liturgy of the Eucharist that Christ gave us, and he is facilitating the process by which the common is made holy, and that we are called into deeper relationship with God and each other. That is our role as Catholic husbands and fathers, to take point on seeing that the practices that lead to the common being holy in our home and that healthy relationship and connection is made. It's our job to make those things happen. And in fact, research really shows that when dads take point on the kinds of habits that make up the liturgy of domestic church life, which is the whole reason that Catholic Home exists, to teach this liturgy of domestic church life and the 12 habits that make it up, that when dads take point on it, they tend to stick more than if moms just do them. That's not to say that moms are irrelevant or that it doesn't work if moms do it. It just works better when dad takes point. In the last video, I made a loose comparison, and I don't want to take this too far, but I made a loose comparison between, say the role of the pastor or the celebrant at Mass versus, say, the role of the concelebrant or the role of the deacon even. The deacon can do certain things. The deacon can marry people. The deacon can baptize babies. The deacon can do a lot of things, give blessings, for example. The deacon can run a communion service. But there are certain things that the priest is just better equipped to do than a deacon is. And the same thing is true that God has ordained men to be able to, when we take point on these habits that enable families to live out the liturgy of domestic church life, they stick more. And I talked about this more last time, but again, it's because children tend to see mom as part of them for the first couple of years. So whatever mom does, especially spiritually, becomes the way I think personally about things. But the way dad behaves tends to be the way I relate to the world, because dad is the first other. He's the first not mom and not me. And so dad represents the world. And so whatever dad does teaches me how to live my faith and my values out in the world. Whereas when mom does it, it teaches me how to think personally about things. So a lot of kids who say that they are spiritual but not religious, they may have some kind of personal spirituality but no outward spirituality, tended to be raised in homes where mom was religious but dad wasn't. So in the same way, these kinds of habits that make up the liturgy of domestic church life become the way we exercise our headship. And the very first habit that I want to encourage all of you to take point on is prioritizing family time. This is a particularly hard thing for men because we mostly were socialized growing up to be human doings. We were, enrolled in sports, enrolled in activities. We were given praise for accomplishing things, and that's all fine. I'm not saying that in its place is wrong. It's not. It's important to have things that we're passionate about and things where we can test our boundaries and challenge ourselves. Those are all good things. But when they compete with family life, they become disordered. And as Catholics, we're really called to emphasize that relationship comes before activity, that intimacy is more important than activity. And that can't happen unless we're prioritizing family time first. And I want to be clear about this because we have a tendency to think that family time is something, prioritizing family time means squeezing it in between all the other stuff that's already happening, right? And so, we're going to get 15 minutes of family time here. That's better than nothing. And I applaud you if you're even taking that approach right now, because that's a step in the right direction. But it also doesn't work because unless we're actually prioritizing family time first and saying, all right, we've got on the schedule when we're going to have family dinners, when we're going to have a family day that involves worshiping together, maybe having a meal together and doing something fun together. We've got on the schedule where we're going to have a game night, and we have a little bit of time throughout the day where we work and play and talk and pray together every day. We get those things down first, and then we figure out what else everybody else has time for. But we don't have time for anything that doesn't allow us to prioritize the things I just described. That's what prioritizing family time means. And men are often the worst offenders when it comes to this, because we want our kids involved at the top tier of the sports that they're in or the activities that they're doing. And it's good to want our kids to succeed. But we can't put ourselves in the position of pushing success at the cost of relationship. There's a way to do both. You can be a tremendously successful person and have a great marriage and family life. I mean, I have been very blessed to be able to do that. But it's not because I'm a genius in any way. It's because every day my wife and I really pray hard that God would teach us how to have the kind of life that he wants us to have, where we are able to prioritize the time it takes to have a strong and loving marriage and family life, and then also figure out how to encourage our own and our kids' interests and passions in ways that don't threaten or compete with family life. And it's taken a lot of creativity over the years. You know, our kids would be involved in drama, for example. And sometimes we had to say, okay, you can be involved in these parts of the drama program, but not these aspects. You know, you can be in this play, but you can't be in that play. You can be in this showcase, but not that thing. And then sometimes it's going to take you doing that when it comes to games. Okay, well, you can go to this practice, but not that practice. Well, that's going to mean that they don't get to play in this. Then that's what that means. Because the most important thing isn't the sport or the activity. The most important thing is your family life and the relationships there. Because that's what we're going to spend eternity doing. We're not going to spend eternity playing music or being in a recital or dance competition or playing sports. We're going to spend eternity relating to God and the communion of saints. And as Catholics, we're called to spend this life learning how to do that. That's what we're called to do. And so making sure that we are, as dads, exercising our headship, not by just saying, okay, kids, we're not going to do anything anymore except stare at each other all day. That's not what I'm saying. But where we are sensitive to the fact that having a strong marriage and family life takes time. And if that means you can't do other things because of that, then it's worth it. I'm not saying that I'm any different than a lot of you. I think a lot of you are in the same position that I am. But you know, there were a lot of years when we were actively raising our kids. Our youngest is now in college, but where I didn't do anything else except work and have family life. And there were lots of times where I could be involved in a parish thing or some other good opportunity, and I would have to say no to it because it would compete with the family. And now I'm in a different season of life where, as I said, our youngest is now in college. And so I have more time to give to my parish or to the community, and that's fine. It's just about respecting the season that we're in. But growing up, you know, not only did I try to be a good steward of my time and make sure that my work and my family got the lion's share of me, but I really made sure that our kids, and my wife too, looked hard at the choices that they made about the activities that they were in and how they would impact our family life. And there were always good discussions and good back and forth and sometimes arguments and a lot of time and a lot of prayer about how to make it all work. And, you know, sometimes when our kids wanted to do something, but the team that they wanted to be part of or the activity they wanted to be part of required too much of a commitment, we were able to come up with other ways for the kid to pursue those interests or passions that were still respectful of the family life, whether that was us doing them together as a family instead, or getting together with a few other friends that had similar interests and doing something that was more accommodating to family life. If you can be creative, you can figure out the how and the when and still do the what. But stop. I would just encourage you as a leader of your home to stop letting yourself be pushed around by the school or the culture or the team that says, no, this is the only way that your kid can do this thing. There are many, many ways that your children can pursue their interests in a manner that is respectful and supportive of your family time. But as a Catholic father, the most important thing to me is making sure that my kids get to heaven. And in order to do that, they need to know how to have strong relationships. That's the entire point of being a Christian, to learn how to love the way God wants us to love instead of the way that comes naturally to us. And that takes time. That takes time together to work out our stuff, to overcome the bumps, and to really learn how to relate and connect in a meaningful way. And that's our job, to facilitate that process. That is the first habit of headship, to prioritize family time in a way that's respectful of the interests and passions of everybody, but that doesn't support those interests and passions so much that we lose that intimate, close, loving, peaceful, joyful connection that our families are meant to be. So, when we do that, we do what Jesus instructed Martha and Mary to do, to choose the better part and choose intimacy over activity. We do what St. Paul warned us about, which is to not pursue all the great goals and accomplishments and wonderful things we could do at the sacrifice of love, because if we do that, then we are a noisy gong. And there are a lot of Catholic families who really mean well, but who are just noisy gongs because they are doing and doing and doing and doing and doing and doing, and they're not relating, and they're not learning how to love, and they're not learning how to relate. And I'll talk to dads, moms, who were raised in families like this, who were constantly doing, and they thought that family time was going to the game and going to the, and they look back fondly on that time because they did have fun. But now their marriages are struggling and their family lives are struggling because they never learned how to relate. They didn't learn how to be a couple or how to be a family because they were always too busy doing things. And so now we want to, avoid the hard work of relationship and just go do more things. But that's not what we're going to spend heaven doing. We're going to spend heaven doing things. We're going to spend heaven being in relationship with God and the communion of saints. And we get there by learning how to do that in this life. And as fathers and husbands, we are privileged to exercise our headship in the liturgy of domestic church life by taking point on lovingly insisting that our family relationships must come first. If you're not sure how to do this, let's continue the conversation on the CatholicHOM app. Feel free to ask your questions in the Questions and Coaching channel. We'd love to continue the discussion there. But this is what it means to exercise headship. Not bossing our families around, not imposing our agenda, but recognizing what God has called families to do, as spelled out in the Liturgy of Domestic Church Life framework, which draws both from Catholic theology and the research in what healthy, holy Catholic families do, and taking point in living those habits out so that we can be the primary celebrants of the Liturgy of Domestic Church Life in our home that makes the common holy and draws our whole family to Christ. Thanks for tuning in.